This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's talk real fast about the match here at No Way Out 2006 and how it's different. Because when the Observer poll comes out, the fans voted this nearly unanimously the best match on the show. Kurt Angle versus Undertaker gets 150 votes. Orton and Mysterio gets 17. No other match gets a single vote. But that's fascinating to me because you go back and you look at your first matches on pay-per-view, particularly the Fully Loaded 2000 show, and Meltzer hated it. He gave it a very poor rating. Was it something where you guys just got more familiar working with each other, or was he still trying to figure out the American Badass character, and maybe you were just new in your career? What was it about your chemistry together that greatly improved in just a handful of years?
Well, I wasn't a seasoned veteran in 2000. I was still learning. Undertaker was calling the whole match to me in the ring. By 2006, I was pumping on all pistons. I was the stud. I was the best wrestler on the roster, probably the best wrestler in the world. And, I knew that Undertaker and I would have a 5-star match. There was no doubt about it. And we actually did. It was a lot of fun. And, the thing is, Undertaker, he is so good at what he does. And you have to match his intensity, and you have to be every bit as good as him. He can carry you, but you have to perform with you. I did that really well. And I think that Undertaker and I were in, I would say, our primes of our career in 2006. Even Undertaker at that point, I believe he was in his prime. So we were prime seasoned veterans that were going at it. We had years of experience behind us.
Let's walk through the match. Meltzer would write, the match started slow. The first big spot was Angle whipping Undertaker's knee into the ring post and doing a figure 4 around the post. Haven't seen that move in years. That's an old Bret Hart move. Did you catch that from watching tape? Was there an agent who suggested it? How does that come to be? Do you recall?
Well, Undertaker brought it up because he said Bret Hart used to do it with him. And so I thought it was a pretty cool move. And, I think we even might have done we did the hit on the post, but did we do the figure 4 on it too? I can't remember.
You are, yeah.
Yeah, I have done that a couple of times. I got it out of Bret Hart's playbook.
Yeah.
You want to be the best, you got to steal moves from the best. So, it was a great spot in the match, and it worked out really well.
Did you watch any old Bret Hart footage, like when you're first learning about professional wrestling and in camps and things like that? Are you studying old tapes, and who would have directed you to study what matches and all that stuff?
I didn't study old tapes because I was told not to, because the psychology changed. When the Attitude Era came around, there was a lot more action. It wasn't, you didn't start off slow. I think everybody was starting with punches. Nobody was tying up. It was just the intensity level of the Attitude Era. You didn't tell a story at the beginning of the match. You didn't wrestle much. You went right, the thing is, you get attacked backstage, you go out there and you're mad and you attack them back. And, during your match, the GM will book the match. You go out and have the match. And instead of starting with a tie-up in wrestling, you're mad because he attacked you backstage. So you start beating him up. That's how almost every match was. It just was ridiculous. So I didn't want to watch tapes of old school wrestling matches. I wanted to watch tapes of the previous or the present product and what they were doing. So I watched a lot of Stone Cold, Rock, Triple H. Once I got to know him, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, I watched a lot of their stuff.
Who would have been the agent on this match? Do you recall yourself and Undertaker?
I can't recall. I believe Pat Patterson, he usually was my agent, so I'd have to say he was. And he probably came up with a couple of the ideas of the match as well.
How much of a match, a main event like this with The Undertaker, not a house show, not a TV main event, but a pay-per-view main event in 2006, how much would The Undertaker have called in the ring, and how much would you have laid out ahead of time?
We probably laid out 70% of the match because you had to.
Sure.
You had submission trade-offs, false finishes. There are a lot of spots in there that you can't call. You have to plan them ahead of time. But Undertaker pretty much carried the rest of the match. He would, his psychology was so simple, but it was so effective. He would start by working your arm, and then when the heat would come, he would tell you to move, and he would hurt his own leg, run in the corner, and then you get the heat that way. So he did that almost every match, and it worked extremely well. So he would call that stuff in the ring, and then we would have the stuff planned, the false finishes and the submission trade-offs and the finishes planned ahead of time.
Taz is on commentary for this show. He's now calling matches with AEW, and we just saw, as this airs a few weeks ago, it was announced that Big Show had joined AEW, and he's going to be doing some commentary over there. How was Taz as a commentator? Did you enjoy his work and that he did for your?
I love Taz. I love this style. He was more of a freestyler. He ad-libbed quite a bit. That's what he's best at. He was doing that in ECW. He would say whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. So Taz, you got to keep him under control a little bit because he can get out of hand. He can say a lot of F-bombs and everything like that. So, you have to keep him under wraps, but he's a very enthusiastic person, and it comes out really well.
Talk to me a little bit about Big Show making the switch. I know that this has been the talk of the internet as you and I are recording. It was the biggest news this week. Were you surprised to see that Paul White is no longer wearing a WWE jersey?
Yes, I always thought that Paul would be with the WWE the rest of his life. I mean, they treat him really well. They did a lot for Big Show. When he quit and went to be a boxer, he lost a bunch of money, and Vince, helped him out a little bit and got him back in the game. And, there were a lot of things that occurred that, Vince McMahon showed his loyalty to Big Show, and Big Show showed it back, no doubt about it. But when he did that show, the Big Show, I thought that was a WWE show. So I'm not sure if it's a Netflix show or if WWE actually helped produce it. So I thought he was in with the company forever because I thought that the Big Show was going to be a WWE product. But I guess I was wrong. I guess it's not. So, I think Big Show probably felt a little bit underappreciated in WWE the last couple of years. They've had him, they humbled him quite a bit, had him job out here and there, and tuck his tail between his legs and walk away, and just. So I understand why he was frustrated. But, I thought he would be with the company forever with the WWE. But you know what? If he's happy, I'm happy.
We're getting questions all the time about, well, they said Sting could never wrestle again, and he's wrestling. And it was in the release that Big Show, while he may be doing commentary, he might wrestle occasionally. Do you think we'll ever see Kurt Angle in an AEW ring?
I don't think so. And, I text Big Show and I said, hey, congratulations on signing with AEW. And he said, oh, man, I feel like I'm 25. And I was like, holy shit, you're going to wrestle? He didn't answer me, but he said he felt like he was 25 again. I guess that means he's going to wrestle. I don't know.
Let's talk about the match here. The Undertaker hits you with a leg drop on the apron, but then when he tries to follow up, you snatch him and put him in an ankle lock on the floor. Over the years, you've had a lot of ankle locks out of nowhere, to borrow a phrase. Do you have a favorite ankle lock moment?
My match with Chris Benoit at the Royal Rumble 2003, the submission trade-offs, getting it when he had me in a crippler crossface and, put my hand down, grabbing that ankle and popping it out of nowhere back into the ankle lock. That match was super special. And the transitions I did there out of nowhere were pretty cool. I also enjoyed doing it with Undertaker, doing the sunset flip over top of his head, and him doing the landing on his back and grabbing his ankle and flipping over and getting the ankle lock in. Those were my two favorite ways of getting into the ankle lock. Catching with Sean out of nowhere was really cool. I did it quite a bit, but it's an exciting move because you can do it at any time.
Let's talk a little bit about the next series of moves here from the Undertaker. He's going to catch you in a triangle choke, and this is 06 now. Meltzer would say, boy, did the crowd need an education process, because the first time he put it on, nobody reacted to it. It's okay. By the end, they figured it out. It's all about the education process. I think both guys really like the idea of working with each other, because the Undertaker is such a big fan of real fighting, and Angle is a fan of making his matches look real. So they're on the same page with their ideas. This was when the Undertaker, who is a real life fan of the UFC and mixed martial arts, started to implement more MMA style stuff. He wore the MMA gloves. He would also use go-go platas and triangles and lots of jiu-jitsu moves. Was that something that you guys knew you were going to try to do together? And were you excited about working that style in a pro wrestling match?
Well, we knew we would have to be very patient with it. We knew that we would have to do it several times, to educate the fans throughout the match, to tell that psychology. So, Undertaker got me in it 2 or 3 times. And by then, the fans got it at the end. And the thing is, being on your back and having that hold on you, you're risking getting pinned. But, Undertaker stayed busy. He would, the ref would count 1, 2, and Taker would pop his shoulder up and keep the shoulder up and have the hold in as well. And then his shoulder would go down. The ref would count 1, Taker would put the other shoulder up. So he stayed busy. He made it make sense in the fact that he could get pinned. So I understand why, Meltzer might think that, it's not a good idea to do it and that fans aren't educated, but you can educate them in one match. It's really simple. You just have to do it over and over again until they get it. And that's what we did.
There's another spot in the match here where the Undertaker threw you into poor ring announcer Tony Chimmel. After Chimmel takes the bump, you give the Undertaker an angle slam through the English announce table. Undertaker at one point is about to be counted out, but you break up the count. We've talked a little bit about those announce table spots and how if it breaks, that's actually in your favor. That's what you're hoping for. It's way worse if it doesn't. But unfortunately, Tony Chimmel's streak with WWE broke this past November. I can't believe this is real. After all those years, they parted ways. They cut him loose. Were you surprised to see Tony Chimmel get released this past November?
Yes, I didn't expect that. Tony's been a loyal employee for, 30 years?
Forever.
I didn't know that WWE would have done that. I just think that it's a shame because Tony has given his heart and soul to the WWE and the business. And, I wish him the best. He's a great guy.
A really scary moment happens next here. You and Undertaker are fighting on the outside. Undertaker whips you into the ring steps, and part of the broken table catches you in the throat on the way down. Meltzer would write it was 7 kinds of scary. You come back pretty quickly. Tell me about that moment and what's going through your head when that happens.
I was that close to crushing my trachea.
Yeah.
I mean, it was scary. There was no way of stopping it. I couldn't get my chin down, and it just happened so quickly. And I'm just lucky that I didn't get seriously injured. Thank God.
When Undertaker's on the top rope, he ran up and do a belly to belly off the top for a near fall. Undertaker comes back and goes for a choke slam, but you roll it into an ankle lock, another very creative transition. And Undertaker nearly makes the ropes, but you pull him to the center. They're pushing the idea that the Undertaker has never tapped in his life. And Undertaker, of course, gets out again. You unfortunately suffer a choke slam, but you kick out. Taker goes for the last ride. And then you did what's known as a Toyota roll into a sunset flip back into the ankle lock like you just described. And Undertaker once again gets out after a long struggle. You're telling the story with the submissions here, and you use another angle slam. He kicks out. He sits up this time, and you put him in another ankle lock. That moment in a match where you're waiting for the Undertaker to do that iconic sit up, is that something you plan ahead of time, or does it just happen and then you react?
No, we planned that ahead of time. That's that's one of Undertaker's spiels, and we wanted to add that. Yeah. We wanted to add that in the match. So it was a great idea, and me slapping the ankle lock on was a great idea afterward. The more ankle locks I gave Undertaker, the more the fans believed he was going to tap out.
Sure,
I had the fans believing in the last 3 minutes that Undertaker is probably going to tap out. It was really believable.
Eventually, he breaks that ankle lock, and then he kicks out of another angle slam, but then he locks in a triangle choke, and you tease tapping, and they do a spot where the referee lifts your arm, and it goes limp twice, but not a third time. That's sort of old school. Whose idea was that? Do you remember?
Yes. Undertaker wanted to do it. He said, this is an old school thing, and let's do the 3 hands, and you keep the hand up on the third one, and then we'll go into the finish. So I did what he told me to do.
You tease tapping, but then you flip over while you're still caught in the triangle. It's a jackknife cradle. That's the pin. You win the match. 29 minutes, 37 seconds. You retain. Meltzer gave it 4 stars. And once again, wouldn't you know it, Kurt Angle steals the show. What'd you think of the match when it was over? Were you pleased with it?
Oh, I knew right then that we nailed it. I knew, whether Meltzer, I don't know what 4 and 5 stars mean. I usually use the term 5-star when the match is better than expected, but yeah. I know Meltzer has these ratings, sure. And sometimes he's on, sometimes he's not so on, but I understand why he does it. But the match to me was the 5-star match. It was as good as it possibly could have gotten. The only setback was the finish, but the finish made sense because that's the only way you're going to beat The Undertaker. You're not going to make him tap out. You're not going to pin him.
And yeah. I thought it was really well done. You don't see that very often. And I'm curious, is that, I assume since you think Pat Patterson was the agent on this one, Pat Patterson, Michael Hayes, guys like that have a reputation for being quote unquote finish guys. So, the writers are going to help us get into this feud and they're going to help us create this big match, but how we finish the match is very, very important. And there's a handful of guys who have a reputation for being tremendous finish guys. And I assume Pat Patterson's right at the top of the list, right?
Actually, you're going to be surprised over this. Jamie Noble came up with that.
Awesome.
The day of the show, Undertaker and I were discussing the match, and we had a couple house shows where we perfected some spots and came in. We still had an open finish and we couldn't figure it out. And Jamie came up with, he saw Undertaker put me in the hold.
Triangle choke?
Triangle choke, yeah. And he said, "Oh, hey, I have a move where you can pin him from here." I said, "Well, I know I can pin him. I got him. He's on his back." He said, "No, I want you to flip over and trap him so he can't get out. As long as he got the hold in, he can't get out." So, Jamie came up with the idea. We put it into our repertoire.
I've heard a lot of people who work on the inside of WWE talk about Jamie Noble like he's a wrestling genius, and that perhaps whatever role Michael Hayes fills right now, Jamie Noble is the heir apparent to that. But I've also heard other people say he maybe has too Southern of an accent for Vince, which is silly, but that is prime on brand for Vince. What can you tell us about Jamie Noble and maybe what his...
Well, he's got a hell of a Southern accent, that's for sure. He sounds as Southern as you get.
Yes.
He's from West Virginia though, so I understand why, but I don't know. Vince, he has these pet peeves. I wouldn't be surprised if his Southern accent gets on his nerves. So it might be true, but I don't think so. I don't think that's the reason.
But as far as being a wrestling genius, you're spot on with that. You think
Jamie Noble is as smart as they get. He's, with experience, because he's been wrestling probably, in the business 20 years.
Yeah.
But, with a few more years experience, he's going to be up there with Michael Hayes and Pat Patterson. He's got all the tools, and he is really well educated in the business. He's one of the best agents, producers that we have right now.
Meltzer would write of the finish here. Has anyone asked a question why someone who is on his back applying a triangle, the ref doesn't count a pinfall on them? This was used as the entire rationale of why the guard can't be used in pro wrestling 50 years ago when jiu-jitsu versus pro wrestling worked matches were held, because holding guard, the guy on the bottom was being pinned. Well, that's food for thought for another day. I know you're not necessarily an MMA expert, but what do you think of that? We have a little bit of creative freedom because we're pro wrestling and we're entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, pro wrestling is anything you want it to be.
Yeah.
You know, if you want the fans not to believe that Undertaker's going to get pinned because he has a triangle choke in, they're going to believe that. You just have to make them believe that. You got to show them that, educate them that during the match. So you can't just put it on once. You got to put it on 2 or 3 times to get fans to say, oh, okay, this is the move again, and he's not going to get pinned, so this match will continue. So it's just a matter of educating the fans.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.